What's up guys, welcome back to a new video. Today I planned on doing a little comparison between the Outback Motortek crash bar system and the Lone Rider crash bar system. I decided to do it outside. I am adorning my summer apparel, but unfortunately summer didn't decide to come to the Baltics yet. It's currently July 8th or July 9th and we still don't have summer, so good luck us. Anyway, to the video. I've been riding with both these crash bar systems for quite a while and I wanted to sort of talk about them for a little bit. So first of all, let's talk about installation. Both crash bar systems are a little bit fiddly, one more so than the other. When you're fitting these crash bars, you need to fully remove this peak. And that requires a couple of little pop outs and then a couple of little plastic rivets underneath. And then you secure the top of the mount kind of in where the radar is, and that's the same on both systems. Installing the Outback Motortek crash bar system, I'm gonna say it was worse than the Lone Rider because one of the main bolts is the main chassis bolt, whereas on the Lone Riders they use all the OEM spots. So where you're disconnecting the main chassis, and even on Outback Motortek's instructions it says not to do both sides at once, do one side at a time, because you're removing that main chassis bolt. Because it's not using all the OEM mounts, you need to have different sockets, different tools to install it. There's also one spot that I don't like on the Outback Motortek, and it's where it covers that mid guard down near your leg. I'm sure they've got their reasons for doing it like that, but it also makes a bit of an annoyance because you can't actually take that plastic piece out without removing the crash guards, which is very annoying. Whereas on the Lone Rider, you can still access all of those parts. Now, I'm not saying that the Outback Motortek was difficult to install. It wasn't difficult. It was very easy. They've got really good instructions. It's very intuitive to do it. I'm just saying that it was more fiddly to deal with because I'm constantly changing what tools I need to use to install it. So at one stage, it's a Torx 50 for the main chassis bolt. Then you got to change to a socket 19 for the main chassis bolt because that's what Outback Motortek gives you to install it. Then there's a T25 for a little bolt which is covering that plastic plate. Then it's Allen key bolts for the upper crash bars to put them in. Then it's also Allen key bolts for the two OEM spots that the Outback uses. So you're always changing the tool that you're using at the time. And for me, I often put a tool down, go and grab the next tool, go back to the bike, and then forget where I put that other tool down. And then I spend 10 minutes walking around wondering where my 19mm socket wrench is. So for me, it's a little bit annoying. I love it when companies use the same bolt throughout when they can. Obviously you can't all the time, and that's what they've done with that main chassis bolt. That obviously you can't have a 5mm screw for the main chassis bolt. It's a 10mm or a 12mm diameter screw. I found that a little bit annoying. So what I like about the Lone Rider is all of that is very uniform. All the bolt heads are the same bit. So it's I think it's a T40, something like that, the Torx bit. I might be wrong, don't quote me on that. You'll know when you get the system, but it's one. It's the T40 to secure the crash bars to the bike. It's a T40 to secure the upper crash bars to the lower crash bars. It's a T40 to secure these ones. It's very nice and neat. Also, it's the same for the skid plate. It's the exact same head. So you literally need one tool to fasten everything up, and I love that. I love it when companies make it so simple for you. So to me, that's a point for these guys. Okay, so let's move on to looks. The looks of both crash bar systems are very nice. I like the look of both of them. The Lone Rider is more of your standard crash bar looks. It's the chrome, it's the nice rolled pipe, it's got some black bits on it. It's your standard crash bar look. I don't think there's anything overly unique about it, apart from the little black skid chuck. But other than that, I think they're they look like a crash bar system. The Outbacks, I think, look amazing. I really like them, and especially in this white. I think the white looks great. I think it's nice and leery. It shows off. I think the design looks really, let's say, if the 1300 lost its rugged look, I think these crash bars bring it back. I think it looks really nice with these crash bars and the skid plate. I think that white just sets it off on the bike, and I think on the white bike it suits even better. So I think for looks, the Outback Motortek is just better. Don't get me wrong, the Lone Rider looks good, but it's like your standard crash bar system. It's there, but the Outback Motortek definitely wins the looks category. Okay, so let's talk about the weight. There's not much between them, but there is something. So there's 1.2 kilos. So depending on what you ride, that's either a lot or not that much. For me, it's not that much. It is still extra weight. So actually, what surprised me is the Lone Rider is 1.2 kilos heavier than the Outback Motortek, based on what they say on their website. So I haven't personally weighed these systems, but what surprised me is the fact that the Lone Rider is heavier, because when I was replacing the Outback Motortek and switching them around, the skid plate on the Motortek feels much heavier, but maybe it was just an illusion. I thought it was much heavier steel, but it's actually not steel, it's aluminium. Both skid plates are both aluminium. So that was very surprising that the Outback is actually 1.2 kilos lighter. Where this counts though, the skid plate on the Lone Rider is 5 kilos. The skid plate on the Outback is 4.5 kilos, which surprises me still. The lower crash bars on the Lone Rider is 8 kilos, and on the Outback Motortek, it's 7 kilos. Then, here's where the kicker is. The upper crash bars on the Lone Rider are 4 kilos, whereas on the Outback Motortek, they're 5 kilos. So what that says is, you're actually, with this, that extra kilos is down lower, which is a good thing. If you are going to have extra weight on the bike, the lower the better. The lower it is, the lower the center of gravity, the less top heavy your bike is. So I think that's actually, it's really good for that. It is still 1.2 kilos heavier. As far as handling and maneuverability, I haven't found overly much of an issue. You are adding basically 17 kilos to your motorbike. It is quite a lot of weight, but it also, I think it's worth it. Hands down worth it. The best investment I've ever made on my bike is this crash protection, because on both, they're both really good crash protections. I have had multiple crashes with both of these bars. Oh no! Oi. Oi. And that is an off. That was a good one. Bloody hell. And I've never damaged my motorcycle, which is great. That's exactly what you want. So I will sacrifice that 17 kilos so that I don't need to pay an €800 bill when I scratch up a fairing or break a cylinder head. A cylinder head's going to cost me even more. But you get my point. That cost of weight, I'm willing to sacrifice for the protection aspect. Now it's time to talk about the bad points. And we'll start with the Lone Rider. I have already mentioned these points. And with the Lone Rider, there's only really, let's say, 2 bad points total. The first one is that weight. It is a little bit heavier compared to the Outback Motortek. I don't know what it is compared to other brands. Look it up on the website. You'll find how much they weigh. So compared to the Outback Motortek, the Lone Rider is that 1.2 kilos heavier. And I'm going to list that as a bad point. You know, it is heavier. That's more weight for the bike. It's more weight for your riding. The second thing I call as a bad point is I think they look a little bit generic. They look like standard crash bars to me, personally. They do have a little bit of flair. They have that extra black bit of plastic slider, but in the grand scheme of things, I think they look like a generic crash bar, which is fine. It was just, for me, it looks like a normal crash bar setup. There's nothing special about it. The negatives on the Outback Motortek. I don't like how you mount it. I don't like that all the bolts are different and you constantly have to change tools to do that. I don't like the skid plate, actually, because of where it ends. It ends right underneath the engine casing. One really good hit on a rock or something like that while you're off-roading, and that could jump up into your engine casing. Now, I'm talking a proper good hit. Like, I'm not saying a light touch will do this. A proper good hit will bash up into your engine casing and possibly crack it, possibly damage it. I don't understand where that design choice came from, because it is literally millimeters from the engine casing where it ends. And I'm pretty sure I've installed it right, because I saw a friend who has the Outback Motortek and his skid plate ended in the same spot. Also, I think it doesn't flare out enough. I think it should come a little bit further out, like the Lone Rider does. It gives just that little bit extra protection. Now, it is in behind the crash bars, but you can always get something up in there. And I have seen a friend who's damaged his exhaust headers, and it cost him some ridiculous amount to change it. Anyway, that's my gripe. I don't like where this plate ends. So I talked about the bolts. I don't like where you have to screw it in and then you can't get into that panel. One of my followers had an issue with, he actually had to top his GS up with oil, and for him it was easiest to take off that plastic panel and then unscrew where the oil top up is. With the Outback Motortek, you can't really do it, or you do it very difficultly, or you need to remove the crash bars, which is very annoying. You don't want to be doing that. So I've crashed with both of these bikes. They both show a bit of damage. I did have one of my followers who was nervous about the Outback Motortek in a crash. When you scrape off the paint, that it'll start to go rusty. These are maybe 7 months, 8 months old, and I had a crash pretty early on when I first got them, and they haven't rusted. That's actually a benefit of the Lone Riders. So the Lone Riders have this black puck that you can actually buy replacements. You can buy new ones and just screw the new one on. So they're actually sliders. I have crashed with these Lone Riders, actually one of my hardest crashes, and this is the damage that they show up. I don't think it's too bad. It looks fine to me, and I can always just change that puck whenever I want. So now let's talk about the price. And there is a vast difference in price, and this could sway everyone's opinion. So the price of the Outback, as I've seen it today, was $947.75. And this is also the price for the top crash bars, the lower crash bars, and the skid plate, plus all the mounting that you need. For the Lone Riders, it's a little bit more. It's €1,199. So it's basically €1,200 for the Lone Rider setup, and that's for the upper crash bars, the lower crash bars, and the skid plate. It's quite a divide. I think it's, how many euros is that? €250? Whew. It's a big difference. But in saying that, if I had to choose one of these crash bar setups, I think I would actually choose the Lone Rider. Just for me, because I'm very easily annoyed when things don't fit easily, and I like that I don't need to remove the chassis bolt on the Lone Riders. I also like the skid plate much more on the Lone Riders. I think the skid plate looks a bit better, looks a bit beefier. It sticks out a bit further, which in my head creates more protection. For me, I would probably pick the Lone Riders if I had to. And I'm not saying that because I am a Lone Rider affiliate. I'm saying that because that's probably my choice. However, the Outback Motorteks are an excellent choice. And I'm sure that with a little bit of refinement, they might change how the skid plate ends, where it ends. Maybe if customers say, hey, I don't think it should be like this, maybe they won't. You never know. Also, maybe they'll change the mounting methods. Maybe they won't as well. I just thought the mounting methods on this one was a little bit of a pain in the ass compared to the Lone Riders. So in saying that, this is an epic system. This is really good. It's going to protect you for years to come. This is also an excellent system, and I think the usability of this system is much better than the Outbacks. So I suppose that's what you're paying for. If I had to choose one on the looks, though, I think I'd choose the Outbacks, to be honest. Oh my god. So in the end, you can choose either one of these crash bar systems. I think they're both fantastic. They're both really good systems. One being a little bit more fiddly for the install. Once it's installed, there's nothing to it. You don't do anything. I do think the skid plate is a little bit out of place. I think they should probably change how that is, in my personal opinion. I think it shouldn't be about to catapult itself into the engine cover. Anyway, just a short video. I don't know how short it'll actually be because it's probably raging on forever. Oh, what's going on here, AOOCCI? Oh my god. If you enjoyed this video, give us a big thumbs up. Subscribe down below if you haven't already. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace, guys. Alright, come on. Come on. Let's have a go. Let's have a go. Yeah. You're crazy. You're a crazy dog. You're a crazy dog, aren't ya?